This section focuses on how co-requisites are defined in HB 2223, the variety of approaches available, and the challenges and opportunities presented by this model. So let's start with the basics. A handful of states, most prominently California, Florida, Massachusetts, and Tennessee, have begun to fundamentally rethink developmental education and are engaged in pilots and initiatives currently to figure out models that might better support underserved student populations. When I say underserved student populations, I'm referring, for example, to veterans or first-generation students, students of color, and students who may have physical and or learning disabilities. So co-requisites enter as a model where entering college students, rather than enrolling in consecutive semesters of a developmental course and then a college level course, are co-enrolled in transfer level English, math, or other gateway courses alongside a form of developmental educational support. All iterations of developmental education exist to address the reality that the majority of our students who enter higher education institutions are not able to establish college readiness, quote unquote college readiness, in reading, writing, or math. As an aside, that term college ready, the reason I have it in quotes is because it's a malleable one, and students have a lot of potential avenues for proving this. So, how many students fall into this quote unquote not college ready category? Well, if we look at the American Institutes of Research fact sheet from 2018, we get a clearer picture. So, from the student perspective, when surveyed, 93% of middle schoolers say that they want to attend college. Of this 93%, 44 actually will. And of those, 26% will graduate with a diploma within 6 years. From the teacher perspective, high school teachers estimate that 63% of their graduating seniors are adequately prepared for college level coursework. But if we look at ACT scores, only 25% of students test college ready in all subject areas. From an institutional perspective, nationwide, 20% of incoming freshmen at four-year institutions and 52% of those at two-year colleges will need some type of developmental coursework. In Texas, which are the numbers that you're looking at here, it's 17.7% at universities and 61% at two-year colleges of first-time, first-entering students in higher education. So to sum up, co-requisites emerge in an environment where there has been a crisis in college readiness, a national push towards acceleration that leads to legislation mandating alternatives to traditional developmental education, and ultimately a reorganization of developmental education, just as we have seen here in Texas. If we look at the history of developmental education reforms in the past decade here in Texas, we can see a number of attempts that have been made to address the needs of this not college-ready student. In 2009, non-course-based options were introduced, providing funding for outside the classroom developmental education support in reading, writing, and math. This was usually through mandatory writing center hours or competency-based computer modules, those types of things. In 2011, we had co-requisites that were introduced, also known as mainstreaming. So this was SB 162, which charged the coordinating board with creating statewide developmental education plans that included approaches to acceleration. And so this is where co-requisites first come in to the discussion here in Texas. In 2012 and 2013, Common Standards for College Readiness, so HB 1244, granted the coordinating board the authority to establish a single set of standards for college readiness, which eventually becomes what we know as the TSI assessment. Cut scores are also established for all colleges during this time. In 2015, there was a push towards holistic advising or multiple measures of class placement. The idea here being that while tests are useful, they cannot be a single measure to determine where a student should place in terms of their initial enrollment in college. Also in 2015, we had the integration of reading and writing. So here, all Texas public institutions were required to integrate the exit level of reading and writing courses into a single course by spring 2015. Finally, in 2017, HB 2223 reduced the maximum number of funded developmental education contact hours from 27 to 18 per student in community college. Texas also has performance-based funding that incentivizes an accelerated approach to developmental education. House Bill 2223 mandated co-requisites for higher education institutions in Texas. They define co-requisites or mainstreaming as an instructional strategy whereby undergraduate students are co-enrolled or concurrently enrolled in a developmental education course or non-course based option, and the entry-level freshman course of the same subject matter in the same semester. Furthermore, HB 2223 requires a certain percentage of students at each college to be enrolled in CoRec models. And here you can see the percentages. By the next academic year, 2021, 75% of all developmental education students will be required to be in a co-requisite course. These percentages apply to, quote unquote, any underrepresented student who does not qualify for a waiver. For example, those who would place into adult basic education, or anyone who would normally qualify for a TSI exemption waiver would not be part of these numbers. According to a 2018 RAND study specifically looking at co-requisites in Texas, there are 5 common models that are currently being implemented across the state. The first and most popular is the paired course model. So this is where the developmental education support, or the DE support, looks relatively like a DE course. So students are enrolled simultaneously in basically a DE course and a college level course. The extended time model is where the DE support is largely an extension of the college level class, often taught by the same instructor with additional instruction time. The ALP model, or accelerated learning programs, where the DE support is provided in a classroom to a small group of students, while the college level course has a mix of developmental education students and college ready students, and the mix tends to be 10 DE students with 10 college ready students. All colleges who are currently implementing this model use the same instructor for both courses. The academic service support model is where the DE support is offered through mandatory academic support services such as writing center or learning lab attendance or office hours. Finally, technology-mediated support. This is where the DE support is offered through computer adaptive models in lab settings, and it may be competency-based. This latest iteration of developmental education is meant to do what all forms of the discipline are: help students succeed in college. So how do co-requisites compare to other reforms or models? Well, there are no easy answers to this. Many organizations, most prominently Complete College America, look at promising data and assert that, yes, this is the model that should be replicated to scale. And indeed, in 2014, 22 states and the District of Columbia pledged to ensure that developmental students complete a gateway course within 1 year through co-requisite models. There are, however, many who point out that the success of co-requisites should not be accepted at face value. They argue that the data is based upon apples to oranges comparisons. So, for example, different intervention models, different course subjects, different instructor approaches, different definitions of what we would call success. And so it is not as conclusive as it first seems. Furthermore, they worry that this is a model that, rather than closing achievement gaps, leaves many students without the reading and writing and quantitative skills they need to truly succeed in their college-level coursework. So the essential question remains, are co-requisites creating access and opportunity for all students? Or are they creating a sink or swim scenario for students who may need more time? There are no easy answers, but these are the two sides of the debate. What cannot be denied is that even as institutions work to implement mandated policy, many faculty, staff, and students understandably resist co-requisite models for a number of reasons. Indeed, major challenges to this model cannot be overlooked, and these were also explored in the RAND study and included limited buy-in among faculty, students, and advisors. Developmental education faculty feel undervalued and fear losing their jobs, while disciplinary faculty show little interest in teaching these courses. Students and advisors, for their parts, are reluctant to deviate from traditional degree plan options. The second issue is issues with scheduling and advising logistics. So new course structures have to fit within existing systems, and that proves really challenging. Trying to balance student and instructor loads is another issue that is still being worked out. The third is limited preparation or support for these models for both their design and their instruction. So there are limited materials available, for example, textbooks, a lack of training and professional development, limited pools of interested faculty, and overall less focus on reading strategies, which is an area that our students need a lot of help in. Finally, the rapid speed and uncertainty around policymaking. As we've already explored, there is initiative fatigue at this point, a lack of state funding for prerequisite design, and many institutions and faculty feel left out in the policymaking process. This doesn't mean that we can't address these issues, but it does mean that a comprehensive approach to implementing prerequisites would require us to consider these and to have solutions for them at the institutional level. I think in a sense, co-requisite models aren't necessarily new. Different iterations, different models, similar models have fallen under the umbrella of developmental education for decades. I do think that the most productive comparison for our work as educators is the faculty learning communities comparison of that model, which has incredible gains in terms of student outcomes and persistence and engagement. I do want to say that there are 4 key differences in which learning communities are different than co-requisites. And the first is that co-requisites are mandated by the state. So the state, rather than it being sort of faculty members coming together and deciding that they want to do this cool model of instruction that really helps students, it's the state saying you are going to have by fall 2020 75% of developmental education students in co-requisite models, in paired course models, or some other form of co-requisite instruction. The second key difference is that the partners are often predetermined because it's mandated, and also oftentimes just because of scheduling. Instructors are being paired together by department chairs, by division deans, by institutions, saying you're going to work together now. The third is that because you're bringing these 2 courses together, it oftentimes means reduction in instructional time. So we have an issue with advising. We also have an issue with instructor loads, and we have an issue with student loads. So how are we going to navigate that? That's a really tricky area of contention, really, in the implementation of co-requisites. The fourth, sort of to take the metaphor of a marriage, so faculty learning communities oftentimes were love marriages, right? It was faculty who really loved each other's teaching style, or were even good friends, and they would come together and create linked courses for their students, and dovetail curriculum and do all of these wonderful practices within that space. Now that the parties are predetermined, it's more of an arranged marriage situation. And to take it even a step further, I use the term polygamous partnerships. We have a lot of developmental educators who are having to pair with 2, 3, 4, or 5 disciplinary faculties, oftentimes in different disciplines altogether, obviously with different learning styles, or teaching styles rather, different curriculum, different objectives, different texts. And so it's really a lot of work for the developmental education side of the house to deal with. And oftentimes, not only are they working with all these different instructors, but those instructors are changing every semester. So there are definitely places where we can improve and maybe try to align it a little bit more with that learning communities model. And we'll be discussing that further as we continue on in the course. For your session reflection, I want you to think about 3 key questions. So what are the potential benefits of the co-requisite model to students? And how do we ensure that they receive those benefits? What challenges do you anticipate or have you faced in your current situation? You might think about curriculum instructor collaboration, or scheduling and advising, or institutional support. These are sort of some key terms to think about. And are there any other factors that we consider? One of the things about taking this training online is that for sake of brevity, I've had to reduce overall a lot of the content. And so there may be things that I have overlooked, that we have overlooked. And so please contribute by giving us your reflection and telling us what you think so far.